Are you turning healthy fruits into highly unhealthy fruits without even realizing it? Fruit can be one of the healthiest things you can put into your body, but the majority of Americans are guilty of making this single mistake that can counteract all of the health benefits of fruit. Some fruits can help with occasional constipation, reduce bloating, and even help burn calories. Others can wreak havoc on your digestive system and energy levels. In this viral presentation, world-renowned heart surgeon Dr. Stephen Gundry showcases the 3 fruits to stop eating today. Go to thehealthyfat.com/inspired or click on the link in the description box below to learn the top 3 common foods that are the cause of your fatigue. Eliminating these foods could forever change the way we help increase energy levels, decrease brain fog, support digestion, and even lose weight. This video has been watched by over 20 million people to date, and you can watch and learn more about it at thehealthyfat.com/inspired.
Now, people often, when they think of other dimensions, they think, well, other dimensions are way out there. And of course, in frequency terms, they are way out there because this is a low frequency world. But there are other frequency bands, call them dimensions, which are very much closer to this one. And there's one which the spiritual arena and ancient cultures, they call it the astral. I call it the 4th dimension. And then there's beyond that, the 5th dimension, and that is beyond the simulation. That is outside the simulation. So if you awaken, this is what I think awakening is. If you awaken to expand your consciousness beyond the 3rd dimension, beyond the 4th dimension, you're then tapping in to information, knowledge, awareness, knowing that is not being tampered with by the simulation. And that's what we call waking up. That's when people start to see things. Why didn't I see it before? Because you were within the simulated, manipulated reality before.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. The mantra of the Inspired live stream. Thank you for tuning in on X, Rumble, and YouTube. And in the live chat, I can see our dear friends. Ronnie is here. Anna is here. Of course, Christine, the wise thumbs in the live chat. MC, welcome. Sojourn, Charlotte. And Charlotte, thank you for your contribution. You're so welcome. Deb is here. Who else is here? Empath Lady, Stuart, good to see you. Reese and everybody else. Andrea, thank you for joining us. In the last few days, weeks, really, we've been getting a lot of messages with questions all over the place, all over the platforms, emails, any possible avenue. And so I thought we should do a live Q&A. We're going to talk about whatever your questions might be, and I'm going to give the answers to the best of my ability. Of course, not pretending that I hold the holy grail of the truth. I might be able to give you a different perspective on certain things, or just a perspective. And it's also appreciation on our part for you being with us here, for you joining us every day, for you sharing the message, and most importantly, living what we're all discovering here, the truth. So thank you. And without further ado, let's get this party started. Okay, first question, and I'm gonna glass this. So Freebird says, what specific book would you recommend to people that best depicts who we are, what we are, where we are, and the overall nature of our reality and our lives? Brilliant question. Thank you, Freebird. I would say that my favorite go-to has been for the last, 15 years almost, the Ringing Cedars series, the Ringing Cedars of Russia, or the Anastasia books, a series of 10 books, which I recommend everybody reads, because it has the kind of depth and the kind of holistic view that you won't get anywhere else. It covers pretty much everything from our true origins to our true history, to our, original design, things like that. And I would say any and all books by David Icke are a fantastic addition to this. So the Ringing Cedars of Russia and David Icke books. I'm just, we had the great honor and privilege. They sent us a copy of the upcoming book that's going to be released in September, The Reveal. Just reading this one, and as always, a brilliant book. So, with that being said, I would encourage you to, the way that I read is something catches my attention, something piques my interest. I pick up a book and I give it, I don't know, 20, 30 pages. And if by 20, 30 pages, I don't feel some sort of deeper connection to whatever's being written, if I don't feel some significance, which is, mainly the truth meter that goes up or down, I don't read it any longer. I used to be in a habit of finishing every book I pick up. I don't do that. I only read books that truly resonate. And some of them, by the way, that I read, they aren't necessarily inspiring. They're just the truth. So that's not the case. It doesn't have to be inspiring necessarily always, but that's the way that I would pick out books. CJ, how do we deal with living in this matrix when we know finding it very difficult to comply? Well, Christine saw your question earlier and she said, then don't. Listen, we are, I'm not telling anyone how to live. I'm just telling you what we live by. And you have, like everybody else, you have a compass inside of you. The truth meter, if you want to call it that, or the BS meter, whatever you want to call it. But it's basically spirit guiding you, and it knows, it always knows the next right step for you. It always knows the right decision for you. It knows how to distinguish between right and wrong for you. It knows that. So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you honoring that, and are you going to honor that or not, regardless of what other people made up before, or how other people are choosing, or what other people chose? That's all. That's really the answer to this question, because complying with something that you know to be wrong and that your spirit tells you is wrong, that just isn't an option for me. I can tell you that. That just isn't. I really don't care about anything else. And it, the courage that it takes to do that is 100% connected to the knowing that you are way more than what looks back at you from the mirror. You're way more than that. If you believe you're only that, right? This body, this physical existence, then I get it. Then that fear seems justified. But if you know what you truly are, then all you have to comply with is your inner true north. That's what I would say. That's how we live, anyways. Thank you for that question.
Can you also comment? It's not a comment today, but we get a lot of comments of, should I move out into the city? Should I sell my apartment? Should I go somewhere else? Where should I go to?
Okay, so sort of a compilation of questions we've been getting that Christine threw in is, people asking, what should I do specifically? They ask us, what should they do? Should they sell their apartment, move out into the country, leave the city? I don't think that in many years of coaching for Christine, and quite a few years of working with people one-on-one for myself, we've ever told anyone what to do. I've never said, do this. And by the way, the guidance that we've received from our teachers or coaches over the years was never do this. It always was, what is your spirit telling you? What are you feeling? And mind you, you have to differentiate between a fear or a true spirit driven choice. So when something is fear driven, and you're sort of trying to make a choice based on fear of what might happen, that is only really valuable when you're in a life or death situation and your instincts protect you. But other than that, your choices should never be fear driven, because that just leads to more fear driven choices. So spirit is once again the answer. And I would really suggest that if you're having a difficult time really hearing it or feeling it or trusting it, I would do breath work and inner journeys every morning. And that really just means you close your eyes, you go beyond the mind, right? You go beyond your awakened state thoughts, and you go into a deeper intelligence. And you can anchor into that with breath work. You go to Wim Hof on YouTube, for example. And if you haven't done it before, just do some of those practices. They will really anchor you on the inside. They will help you to balance and focus on something that's deeper, and the answer will appear. And so that would be the answer to that. MC, we have a lot of initials here today.
Yeah.
Will we go to war, and will the draft be enforced? So first part of the question, will we go to war? We are at war. I think you're wondering about the kinetic state, but I don't think that the kinetic, meaning physical war, meaning weapons, tanks, and all other kinds of uh, modern weapons, are worse than the psychological and spiritual warfare that we're all in. I think it's just a continuation, another tactic. I think there's a strong potential for things to go kinetic, at least in certain places. But ultimately, the choice is ours. You know, there's an old saying. If there's war and nobody shows up, you can declare whatever you want. The potential is here, and the fault lines, the division lines have been drawn for a very long time, and there's no inherent interest by those who control the megaphones, right? The media and so forth. Right now, there's no inherent interest to sort of quell the flames and be calmer about it, because these entities are using all their tools, all tools at their disposal to get what they want. And to them, whether that is just psychological or kinetic warfare makes absolutely no difference in terms of, do they feel worse about any of the options? It's just what gets the job done. That's really so. Um, I don't have any insider information that about the draft itself. I would just look at historic records. What happens when nations go to war? There's a progression, right? There's the draft comes in progressions, and when there's sort of worry or fear about war, then talk about draft appears. Then the first stage is activated. When it goes into a real life scenario, the second stage is activated. And at the end, right, when a war is in full bloom, oftentimes it goes, it used to go through the entire male population. Germany very much was void of males after the Second World War. They sent the kids out in the end, right? So this is usually a progression. And other than that, I don't have any other insider info. Deb asks, how do we protect from psychic attacks that keep our vibration low? And related to that, are energy weapons being used to keep vibes low? Absolutely, but it's in the disguise of technology that a lot of people use, right? So there's all kinds of kinds. You have to assume, and because everywhere I look and I assume, and then I try to find evidence, I find evidence, but you just have to assume that basically every element that can be used against our um, innate true capabilities, being psychic, being intuitive, being creative, all these sort of divine abilities, anything that can be used against us is being used against us. Thank you, Charlotte. Appreciate it, both of you. And so that is just an assumption that we can make, because everywhere we look, we can confirm that assumption. Now the question is, how do we protect ourselves against it? By becoming the best possible version of ourselves and on all levels. This message truly is one I'm I'm sharing every day by overcoming the impulses that you've been programmed with of, for example, eating junk. That's for a lot of people, or consuming other kind of junk, or watching junk, or just anything that weakens you physically, spiritually, mentally, right? So on the flip side is what strengthens you. Well, clearly, very, very high level nutrition. That doesn't have to be extremely expensive. It just has to be selective. Anything that comes in a box, in a package, it usually is frozen. For the most part, that's in the frozen food sections, you can just toss. There's very little actually that you find in a grocery store today that will do that. Farmers market are a better place, or maybe surrounding places, organic food stores. That's a much better way to start. Clean water, to the best of your ability, find clean water. And like I've said and shared in a live stream recently, we've had a ritual for many, many years. We used to do that with our kids when they were younger. We still do it, but they weren't as aware as they are now. We bubbled them up in a blue energy bubble. So that's what we call the blue energy shield. And for us, it was blue. It might be a different color for you, but it's a protective energy that we imagine around our children. And we're very powerful, all of us, like that. And that energy simply only allows through what is beneficial to them, nothing that harms them. It has worked out really, really well, you know? So those are sort of things that we can do. And then yeah, I was just going to say, and then really the biggest support system for all aspects, physical, spiritual, psychological, has really been, bar none, FLFE. Like, you know, we have amazing um um supplements that we take, and we're going to share more about that soon. Just now, we found some of the best in the world, I think. You know, and we talk about that. FLFE is sort of the field. It's a quantum technology, a non-invasive, non-AI. We talked about it a lot, and you can give it a try. They give you a free trial, no credit card, no anything needed, and that creates a high consciousness field right around your property, your home, that you literally bathe in, right? And it is it clears out negative energies. It has EMF protection. It revitalizes the food, the water. It has an incredible effect on everything that's within that field, your pets, your family, your relationships, your finances. It just positively affects everything. And that's what I would encourage. This is one of the most important services in the world today, bar none. So FLFE, the link's in the description. And again, you can just try it. Absolutely no strings attached. So that's another thing that I would absolutely do. Carrie, can we still reincarnate? I might be the wrong person to ask that. I'm sure you can. I don't want to. So, you know, I might be the wrong person to ask that, but um, you know, this goes beyond what, let's say, the current Christian traditions talk about for the most part. And this goes out into the woo, right? It goes out into an arena that a lot of people are afraid of even talking about, because it means it's demonic, or this is the false teachings. And let's just appreciate for a moment that the early Christian doctrine, or the early Christian teachings, very much knew about reincarnation, talked about reincarnation. So let's just do that. But um, you know, I think that most people are caught up in an unconscious cycle of that. So not knowing when they exit that they're going to be recycled. And so I would say that one of the main goals, maybe, of a lifetime is to become conscious, to become aware, to become the creator of your experience versus just the experiencer. And so what I would say is, you know, to expand your consciousness and your awareness to that point where, when you do make the exit from this body, that you are in charge of your choices, and so that you consciously choose whether you want to come back here, or whether you're ready for another experience. So I think that this is the sort of the spiritual maturation that a lot of people are going through. That, you know, it used to be caught up in the karmic teachings that were to a certain degree very restrictive, because they prescribed that you had to go through all these hoops and had to jump through all these hoops to make it happen. And I think we're liberating ourselves from those restraints in our minds, and we're realizing that there is no limit to how far we can expand our consciousness and how much of self-determination we can achieve. So that's what I would say. Carol, could you talk about the divine matrix and before the simulation got into place? Thanks. Big questions here. So I can only speak from memory, right? So something that I feel in my spirit, something that I have memory of, and something that, Christine and I on our walks talk about. And I'll kind of ask you, I'll ask you, I'll put the question back to you. What is it that makes you strive for truth? Like, what is it that makes you want to look beyond all the deception? What do you remember on some level that you used to know or used to experience or had the experience of that makes you see that this cannot be it? See, I think much more than people realize, we're driven by memory than we're driven by a vision of the future. Yes, we have a vision of the future, but where does it come from? How do we remember a place that feels like infinite possibility, that feels light and that feels connected and that feels unburdened? How do we know this? Because in this lifetime, such a place exists for but a few moments, or it can exist to a certain degree as the constant in your life, but not fully. We're burdened by weight. Like I have a memory of a time of being weightless, being present but weightless, not having to carry all this with me, if you know what I mean. Less dense, more ethereal, more translucent, if you will. So all these things seem to be memories, and I think they are saved to a part of us. They're still there, that is infinite, and that part inhabits this body, but it isn't this body. So to me, the divine matrix, or the prime reality, is that memory. And something gives me incredible inspiration and energy every day to help all of us, together with many others, to return to that, to bring that back, right? And it can't be described any better. And that's why we emphasize the tuning inward, the going inward so much, and really feeling spirit. Spirit gives you this information, and it so clearly shows that what we experience as our physical reality, if we decode it, can't be the real thing. It cannot be the real thing, because otherwise we would be perfectly in sync and aligned with it. We couldn't go where we're going in our minds. We couldn't go where we're going in our spirits. We couldn't, because that would be it. So I hope this was a little bit of an answer. Carl Butler, how connected is the climate engineering spraying of our skies to the out of control wildfires? That's hard for me to say, but people that study this every day that we talk to, Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org. From all the information that I've gathered, is it all works in symbiosis with each other, right? So all these initiatives have different different objectives. So the geoengineering is basically a reshaping of this realm, right? It is creating a different atmosphere, and it is creating a different biosphere, one that, for all intents and purposes, is anti-human, because our existence in the biosphere, as it is being more and more geoengineered, becomes more and more challenging. very natural things become very challenging to us because it is not a conducive environment for us. So that kind of points then leads to the question, well, to whom is it conducive, right? What species thrives in an environment like this and that they want to create, right? A carbon neutral or zero carbon environment. We are carbon, by the way. So this is a very interesting question. And the geoengineering very much seems to work for that. Then the fires, which most of them aren't wildfires, they're calling them that, I believe are part of this is to depopulate those areas and bring people into urban dwelling zones, right? The 15-minute cities, because that's what happens in a lot of places. These fires, they swallow up hundreds of thousands of acres and they displace people. And oftentimes the federal government will confiscate that land, or BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. And so they will confiscate, or the state, and they won't allow people to return there. And so people more and more move closer and closer to the urban areas. So I think those are multiple objectives working, of course, in concert, but for different reasons. Deb again. Deb is getting apparently Deb is asking some really great questions. Is it a general experience amongst others that direct communication from spirit guides has been reduced last 3 years? I would think so. And there's, it's a great question, by the way. I see why Christine picked it. So here's what 2020 did. If we can appreciate the fullness of our experience, up until 2020, a lot of people were really, really focused on their inner development, on their spiritual development. While the world definitely wasn't an easy place to live in, it had some normal structures that were reliable in terms of, you could sort of rely on those structures and how the world functioned. You knew it and you knew how to be in it. 2020 changed all that. It required, especially of those of us who were tuned in with the truth, it required of us to be very, very much aware of our physical reality, what is happening here, of the politics that invaded our lives, of the authoritative actions that invaded our lives. So we were dealing with very, very physical things. And we needed to make choices on a physical level for our survival, for our families. We had fights, about the truth. We had quarrels within our families. So that all took away from our inner work. And it, on average, lowered the consciousness on average on Earth. Like, it lowered the entire consciousness process. We've been since on the rebound. So that it anchored us in our physical reality. For a lot of people, it brought out the inner warrior. It gave them an opportunity to really discover all of that. Also anger, also fear, all of those things. So that was definitely not conducive to the inner journey as much. However, these cataclysmic events, and it is a cataclysm, if you will, these events truly lead people to asking bigger questions. So that's why 4 years in, a lot of people arrive at that point where they are seeing the outer reality for what it is and what it isn't, and asking a bigger question, who am I truly, which leads back inside. So I think that's the challenge that you're describing. It can be measured, that challenge. We have actually the data points. Again, this is from Clayton, one of the founders of FLFE, who does these calibrations, who clearly calibrated that our average level of consciousness has gone down in 2020 and has been on the rebound since. Lisa, what is FLFE? Oh, I get to talk about one of my favorite things. And listen, this is, for me to get so excited about something like FLFE, is the thing I would have never expected in my life. So FLFE it's a technology, focused life force energy. You ask my wife or anyone who knows me, I'm an anti-tech guy. Like, I'm the guy, my heart, just me, for me, I'd be out in the boonies, I'd be out in the sticks riding horses, having our dogs with us and just be out in the wilderness. That's where my spirit really lives. So when we were introduced to focused life force energy, which is a quantum technology, and what does that even mean, quantum technology? Well, quantum recognizes that everything is connected and that there truly is no distance in that quantum field. It's basically, the principle is that you can think of someone that is 2,000 miles away, and let's just say you think of them very fondly and warmly, and you're just basically sending them a huge smile because of the love you have for them. If there's even a remote tuning in by that person, they can feel it. They can feel your warmth. You can do remote healing. You can do, telepathy. You can do all these things. And sometimes when you do that, that person will pick up the phone and call you, and you'll go, "How did you know I was thinking about you?" Well, they felt you. So that is quantum. We can describe this with quantum entanglement. That is how this technology operates. When you sign up for, let's say, your free trial, they will ask you to take a picture. This is the newest way they do it, of your, let's say, your picture you have on your living room wall or your fireplace, something that is unique to your place, that only exists in your place in that way. That is a unique identifier. And then they will activate a field around that, a certain with a certain radius, and they will activate a high consciousness field of a minimum of 550 on the Hawkins map, which is unconditional love. And I want to share a story with you so you understand just how this operates. Christine and I were invited about 2 months ago to go to an incredible meeting in Georgia. A friend of ours brought together 13 people from all over the place. And we had a gathering, a incredible experience together, and started a project together. But it was really about the expansion of consciousness, of friendship, and all that. It was just wonderful. But before we went there, Christine did something incredible. She said, "We're going to put an FLFE, a high consciousness field, on our friend's property." She didn't tell him. She didn't tell him. She just called up our friends at FLFE and had them activate a field. 550, like I said, unconditional love. So we didn't tell anybody. We just went there, and we're in that experience. About 24 hours in, I started noticing something. Around the table, when we were talking and having meals, there were two words I kept hearing in different contexts and different perspectives, were unconditional love. Everybody started talking about unconditional love and unconditional love this and unconditional love that. And it took me about 24 hours to realize, holy shit, they're really picking up on the FLFE field. It was incredible harmony. It was incredible alignment, synchronicity. And naturally, this isn't just the field. The field doesn't fix everything. It just provides, kind of like your heating system provides the warmth, so you don't have to worry about that in winter. It provides a high level consciousness field that you are constantly in. And there's even a mobile version of that where they use your phone number as a unique identifier. Once again, there is no tracking, there is no AI, there's no downloads, there's no devices that you need for that. So again, the links in the description. You can read up on the website. They have tons of science on this too. How it increases plant growth, how it heals the soil, how it clears negative energies, how it mitigates EMF. It's all scientifically shown because they're scientifically driven. They're nerds like that. Incredible. I could go on and on and on about it, but you just got to give it a try. It's just that good. So that's coming from an anti-tech guy, just so you know.
That's not a question, but I still want you to.
Manifesting Marin. Insane how the truther community still overlooks 5G. It's literally in place to be a fence for us. So, how do we know that this is a significant subject that is highly impactful? Because on this platform, we're not supposed to talk about it. As a matter of fact, on this platform, talking about it is very, very unwelcome. That's how we know. We do this a lot on locals. Locals, we go all the way because there are no restrictions. But I will say this: um, more than 10 years ago, because when you're as obsessive as I can get about researching and studying, and my wife can, she can tell you stories about 15, 16-hour days where I was just deep in it. But when you're as obsessive, you start reading studies and you start reading scientific studies and you start doing weird stuff that most people don't do. So 10 years ago, I read about where the future of wireless communication is going, where the technology is going. And I read about the proposal of the telecommunications companies to introduce a completely new technology. So if you think about the previous generation, the 3 and the 4 have nothing to do with the 5. And they were talking about how they were going to introduce this bandwidth of frequency. And guess what all the scientists were saying and warning against? They were saying this is military grade frequency that is used for certain military grade weapons. Okay? This should never be used in a general sense all the time, everywhere, for the civilian population. It's a military grade weapon. And 10 years ago, they warned against the effects that it was going to have on the body, including the absorption of oxygen, which is going to be heavily challenged. So I will have to pull out these studies that I read 10 years ago. And here's the thing: you read that and you go, okay, well, maybe putting out all this information is going to help stop it. And then it just other things come your way and you do other things. And then 10 years later, this whole thing rolls out and you go, wow, I remember studying this, right? And now it's here. So this is the problem with this, is that it is such a broad spectrum of frequencies, and they can turn it up and down the way they want to, right? So they can operate on a small bandwidth or they can start amping it up, and in an instant that creates incredible challenges for us. So the reason why the truther community doesn't talk about a lot of these important subjects enough is because they've been heavily infiltrated and they've been steered towards the left and right political game, where they spend most of their time playing basically the same game the mainstream media is playing. And if they ever had roots, they've forgotten where they were. So this is the split in this community of truth and freedom that we're experiencing now. But this subject is being studied, it is being talked about, and there are initiatives. So thank you for bringing it up. It's definitely a hot topic among the real people in this movement. Jackie Burns: do you see the Chinese invading the US? They appear to be setting things up, like buying farmland, sending aerial balloons over our country, and we didn't take them down. What's that about? I would point you back to statements and books written by people like Henry Kissinger or Zbigniew Brzezinski, who were some of the most prominent geostrategists of the 20th century, and also some of the most ruthless and cold-blooded, if they indeed were human, which I don't believe they were. But and their books are very, very clear. It's very, very clearly laid out how the United States could be taken over if necessary. And it was always clear that you had certain challenges to subdue America. You have to take into account the hundreds of millions of firearms that are in the possession of the people, the billions and billions of rounds, and the ability to use them, right? So that's what you have to take into account. It is unlike other places here. It's a perfect storm, and people have not lost that. That's one thing. The other thing is that another challenge is to make the military or other agencies go against their own people in a significant way. Without, short of AI robots, which they have, that's another difficult thing to do. So if you really needed or wanted to have a physical invasion, then you have to do it by infiltration, and you have to do it by bringing people into the country that have their allegiance elsewhere. And so if what we have witnessed and seen, and what we have heard from our friends on the ground is even remotely true, that condition has been created through the invasion of our southern border over the last years. So what I'm saying is there is a potential that is definitely here. Whether it would be successful, I doubt it. I doubt it. I just don't think we appreciate just how well and alive in certain sections of this country the Second Amendment is. So um I don't know. It's a possibility. But troops coming from outside of this country on a ground invasion into this country, that's almost a no scenario from any military simulations I've seen in the world. So basically, almost every country that is, of course, looking into all kinds of scenarios that is powerful enough to do this, see the ground invasion of the United States as the least viable option. That's to the extent that I can answer that. Madame Zeroni. Oh man, we have such creative names. Do you think preparedness matters in these times? I believe the Hopi prophecy or some other prophecy mentions something that those who are evil can hide from the purification. I think those are two different questions. I almost don't want to say preparedness, because what we're really talking about is a return to real self-reliance. So what is preparedness on a physical level? Well, almost everybody lives fully reliant on the system in one way or another. Some directly by even collecting food stamps or money from the government to cover their basic needs, and others indirectly by relying solely on the institutionalized systems like the food supply chain and the tap water and all that, and power on their basic needs. So whichever way you slice it, most people are dependent on the system. That is not natural, that is not normal, and that is not how we lived for the longest time. So I would um cross out the word preparedness and talk about self-reliance. And self-reliance should not be a strategy to overcome any problems, but it should be a lifestyle that we adopt again and that becomes normal again. That's really where I see this. So we need to begin relying on ourselves again, on our own skills and our own abilities, and on our families, communities. It's a change in perspective, right? It's a change in lifestyle. So yeah, sure. I mean, we are prepared for the transitioning period, and we encourage everyone to prepare for the transitioning period that we're in. But at the same time, focus on becoming self-reliant in all areas. I think that really is the key section. And the second part of the question, the purification. Uh, I will give you this absolutely, that have been saying is no new conspiracies seem to stick. So no new deeds of evil seem to stick. They can still be done, but they can remain hidden. So everything's being uncovered pretty quickly now, and there's really truly no place to hide for them any longer. And so that's when they entered the room. They're in the room. They're becoming visible, and they will have to face the consequences of their actions, right? So, you know, may the Creator have mercy on them, because I know we won't. Anna, dear friend, good to see you. How have you and Christine reached out to your loved ones in the best way? Or are those closest to you aware and enlightened? Becoming a prophet on my own street or farm hasn't gone so well for me. Uh, well, I would have to go 15 years back to answer that question. That's when we really, really started committing to this kind of journey in a deeper way. So at that time, crazy doesn't even begin to describe what we were called, right? Complete lunatics, so far out there, because you couldn't go on the internet, on social media, and find other people that talked like we do or said similar things. We were just people that would sit around a table with mainstream matrix oriented people, and if we would bring up subjects that were out of the ordinary, you could just see them go, what the fuck are you talking about? You're crazy. So that's what we dealt with 15 years ago, and we decided to just not give a shit. And our families, to a certain extent, have our immediate families have certainly, what they've certainly seen is that we called so many things correctly before they happened, and then they happened just like we said they would. And so that, that makes them think, and that made them think. So what happened was there's more trust, right? So there's more trust in that apparently we're not just crazy theorists here, but there's something deeper going on. But the program runs deep. And so I feel like there's only so far that you can go until that program is overwhelmed and it shuts down. Um, but frankly, that's a small part of the equation for us. We really don't try to convince anyone. Here's what we have to offer. Here's what we can show you. Look at it or not. Do the best you can or not. We did our job, and we move on. So that's kind of how we've dealt with it. And may the chips fall where they may. Kevin James. Sean, where do you stand on privacy coins like ARRR Pirate Chain and XMR Monero? Well, we hold some Monero, just little, very little. This is just my take on it, right? I know where the world says it's going, and I know where the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the central banks, the EU and the Australian and the New Zealand government. I know where everybody says the world is going. And I clearly see that the world is going into blockchain and crypto and tokenization, and that's where the world says it's going. I think a lot of people have maybe an incredible challenge with believing that something has value that they cannot see, that they cannot touch, and that at least vanishes from their perspective when the power goes out. I'm not saying it vanishes, but it vanishes from their perspective. So as opposed to even a paper bill that you have in your wallet, or a gold coin, or a bag of rice, you hold it, you have it, you can touch it, and in most circumstances, it brings you some sort of value, right? So I think the great problem that a lot of people have with crypto is that it is invisible to them, and it goes away when the power goes out for them, right? And you and I cannot really trade. It's very complicated for us to trade if the power goes out, and especially not in a connected way. So my whole issue with this is that I can't see this to be the sustainable thing for the future. I know the world sees it differently, but I just see it this way, right? And so I think that real people are going to want to run real things. Now, the next generation sees it very differently. To them, the story is very different. So I don't have a specific answer on those specific coins, nor am I an expert. I will just tell you that this is what I've been hearing from people, and that generally speaking, a lot of people simply don't believe in it. So that's all I have to say about that. James Tinsley, what's your view on the future of this country? I'll tell you what my view is. I love this country. I love this land. I love the beauty of it. I love the spirit that's still there. I love its history that needs to be included again, its true history, and um, embodied, right? Everything, not just since the settlers arrived. And man, I love the potential that it holds. It's quite unique. As a matter of fact, in our upcoming interview with Greg Braden, that's a focal point of our conversation. So that's coming up in the next few days. So really, you can look forward to that. But we could easily pack up and go find a nice little place in Central America, South America, somewhere off the beaten path, and live beautifully. Have orchards and maybe a few cattle and chickens and do that. That would be quite easy to accomplish. The thing is, this is home. This is where a spirit wants to be. So the future of this country depends on what you and I and all of us together do now, literally now. There is no preset course that cannot be altered uh, if and when we get fully activated. And I think the best days for this country, for this nations, are still to come. I think it hasn't lived up to its true potential. It hasn't lived up to its promise, and we are the ones who can change that. That's how I feel about the future of this country. Christine Petrovit, could they put a FLFE field around the Earth? So there is a very big power component. So just to talk about a little bit about the company itself. So FLFE employs about 50-ish plus people now. And the technology itself requires us quite a lot of power. And they're the way that they provide their services, 90% of what they do is in service of humanity. So basically pro bono, if you will. The 10% that is the business aspect where people buy subscriptions, that fuels the other 90%. So they do a lot of service projects as much as they can. But of course they're limited by some factors that we're all limited by. Is I can only do this so much because I need the power to do it. I need literal power and I need manpower to manage it. There's a lot that goes into it. So they are doing a lot of service projects. And then there is another component to this, that the field is most effective when it works in conjunction with free will. So you can't force high consciousness on people, is what I'm saying. People have to be sort of aware and make a choice to be in that field and to work with it. And so there is no magic pill or magic potion or magic wand that we could wave and just make the whole world a certain way. We have free will. It's the most powerful thing that we have. It allows us to direct our expression in any way that we want to. And that's how we need to look at this. We have to come to the level of where we make a free will decision to choose the path of higher consciousness, right? And that's where the FLFE comes in as an incredible support system, just incredible. I'm going to butcher your name, so I'm not going to even say it. I have asked if there are any countries that aren't in on the OWO plan. Is there a book list anywhere? What is the OWO? I know the NWO, the New World Order. What is the OWO? Or is that a typo? So I can't answer that question unless I know what the OWO is. The One World Order. Okay, sure. New World Order, One World Order. Show. Now the penny dropped. If that's what you meant. If any countries that aren't in, I don't know. I see glimpses of hope on national levels. From, if you're talking from the perspective of governments, I see glimpses here and there. And it's not for me to say, oh, I love everything that this leader does or this government does. I'm saying, do I see that their choices are leading to a different outcome. I'm having a hard time saying yes. I see way more in the people than I see in governments, but governments to a certain degree consist of people. So there are great people in bodies of government that realize what's going on, that they don't want this, and they are doing everything they can. Um, 15 years ago, the most common question was, whether that was in America or whether that was in Central Europe, was, where do I move to where they aren't as crazy as here? And there were answers to that. It used to be New Zealand was one of the big answers. South America, some countries were the big answers. Certain places in Asia, like Bali was one of those places. Other places in Indonesia. So there were sort of a list of places that people wanted to go to escape the madness. Now the madness has arrived everywhere, and people have realized escaping is not the goal. Changing what and who we are and how we express ourselves is the goal. So we change the course. That's why I've been saying the battle has arrived. We have to answer the call, stay where we are, and fix it from within. That's the sort of the solution we've come to. Because even if you manage to escape, even if you manage to go to some remote place, if this plan comes to fruition, their plan, it will reach you. So I think there's no more thinking like that, if that was part of your question. But no, I can't say that I know of any country that is fully away from that, or has fully detached from that vision, but I'd be happy to learn if there is. How do we unincorporate U.S. corporation? This country is a corporation now. Okay, yeah, sure, but what difference does it make? Like, I've been studying this shit for a long time, and I don't know many people who've read as many legal texts and law texts and who've studied this into the depths. There were, but not many, and studied all the ways to go out to unincorporate, like you say. There was a filing in 2012 called OPPT, the One People's Public Trust. It was a big thing back then, and it was a UCC filing, which is the Uniform Commercial Code. And in that filing, basically, it dissolved any and all entities like these corporations. We used to think that this was more a symbolic thing. However, the way the world has unfolded since showed me it might have had some effect. But the truth of the matter is, what does it matter? What does it matter? This system has given itself and appointed to itself so much power and authority that comes from nowhere but their imagination. What does it matter if they use it through a corporate system or through a quote unquote de jure constitutional republic? Hijacked is hijacked, right? And a lie is a lie, and deception is deception. Once again, there is no letter document that we can sign that will shift consciousness. But that's what we need. We need a shift in consciousness. The papers will follow. The documents will follow. The letters will follow. But you can't mandate new consciousness into people. You can't mandate a rise in consciousness. And this is a spiritualist and inner journey. I tried all of it. The being pulled over by a cop, no license plates, and no driver's license, having those arguments, explaining to them that I'm not subject to their jurisdiction, blah, 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 blah. And that's not the path. That is not the path. When I had conversations with those officers about who they think they are, how they see themselves from 9 to 5, and how they see themselves when they take off their uniform, if they're still that authority at 5:30, and how their families are affected by policies that go against their best interests, all of that had way more success, because that spoke to them on a level that they could understand and that affected them. So we're shifting consciousness, and all these, it doesn't mean, listen, if you go in a crowd today, any average crowd, you go out there on a town square and you talk to them about how the United States is a corporation, it means nothing to them. It means nothing to them. It has no, they don't even know how to think about it. if you ask most people what they think this nation is, what's a democracy, right? And some people say it's a constitutional republic. And then just a few think it's it's a corporation, but it means nothing to the average person. But if you ask them how they have felt over the last 4 years, if you ask them what they have experienced, if you ask them how their relationships have shifted in their families, if you ask them whether they are thinking that something is going on in the world, that something is changing, most people will tell you that they feel something. Now, that is consciousness interacting with consciousness. That's a way that we can bridge the gap. Way more important than the other stuff. Again, this will follow. This will be a natural consequence of the rising of consciousness, will be that everything that has been in a state of deception will transform into a state of truth. Because when truth manifests on a larger level, it manifests on all levels. That's what I see way more important. And that's as someone who's had the same questions as you had and who's been studying this for a very, very long time. I don't know how long you've been studying it. I don't say I know more or longer, but that's the conclusion where I see more solutions than anything else. We're done with this, the last question. Great questions, y'all. Thank you. Thank you for, I will say this, the expansion of thought and of awareness around these subjects is fully reflected, I feel like, in your questions. Like it's like we're having such beautiful discussions on beautiful levels together, and I appreciate that so much. You don't even know. And I'll give you a quick preview of something that Greg Braden said during our interview. Because apparently he's watching our community, right? He's tuning into our channel every now and then, and he's looking at your comments and has a good feel for this community that we are. And he just gave you a rave review about how astute and how in tune and in sync and knowledgeable you all are. And I can only second that. Like, it's really a powerful community that we feel blessed to be a part of. So thank you for that. And it's being recognized all over the place that we're part of the game changers here together, my friends. So thank you for this. Thank you for a beautiful conversation, for your great questions. I'm sorry if your questions didn't get asked today or answered. We'll do this again soon, and join us again. And if you want to do more of this kind of interaction, this is happening way more on Locals, by the way, and deeper and intimate and uncensored. So if that's of interest to you, join us there. It's a whooping 19 cents a day, and it keeps the trolls away too. So it's wonderful. Links in the description. So thank you, my friends. Much love. Many blessings. We'll be back with you again very, very soon. And right now, you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.